let's talk about Martellus Bennett.
Second home run of the year.
Get the ball outside, but Robert Horry never left his position. On the trampoline and into the end zone.
He played out his rookie contract in Dallas, and then at the end of the day, he wanted more money, and he also wanted to be a starting tight end. So he went to the New York Giants, but he only signed a 1-year contract, and he had an okay year. Then came along the Chicago Bears, who signed him to a 4-year, $20 million deal. And when they did that, basically that's where he started to produce. In 2016, he gets traded to New England, and it's in the middle of the season. And this is when these clips come out. So I'm assuming that they filmed this documentary. I don't know exactly when they filmed it, but I'm assuming that they filmed it towards, maybe he was still in Chicago. I don't know, but it was released in the middle of the 2016 season. So all of these clips, you have to have the context of his career and where basically he was, because he hadn't won his Super Bowl yet. So he wins the Super Bowl the season that this documentary came out. But all of these things he said about Chicago, he literally was either on the team or had just been traded when he says all of these things. And then also just sprinkled in the first clip I'm going to play, he's talking about Dallas, and it's just hilarious to me because in Dallas, he never had more than 300 yards in a season. You know, he in 2010 he had 12 touchdowns. Actually, he had 12 touchdowns his rookie season as well. But you know, he was pretty underutilized, and they didn't run. They obviously were favoring Jason Witten, but as a young and up and coming tight end, it's just crazy to hear him say the things that he says about Dallas.
Martellus arrived in Dallas in 2008. Right around the same time, another tight end was putting up all-pro numbers.
Romo back to throw, looking in the end zone, Witten's all alone. Touchdown, Jason Witten.
As the backup to a perennial Pro Bowler in Iron Man, Martellus spent most of his time on the bench.
I'm not a backup, so yeah, I was frustrated as fuck. Witten didn't talk to me when I was in Dallas. He didn't help me. Very rarely did we talk. He didn't teach me nothing. He didn't help me out. You know, there's times when I asked him stuff, he'd be like, figure it out. I hated him. I hated Witten. Oh man, this guy out here, he can't run like me, he can't jump like me, but how does he keep getting open?
In Dallas, Bennett earned a reputation for being unmotivated and selfish, often clashing with the Cowboys coaching staff.
They try to put their thumb on me, you know, like try to control me or make me something I wasn't. Instead of trying to change my game and make my game better, they were trying to change me as a person, as a human being, and that was something I was always fighting. I didn't like Jason Garrett. I never really got along with him, but I don't know. Fuck Jason, really. I don't give a fuck about Jason.
What the what is that? Like, okay, that's amazing. So, okay, so I love every single thing about this documentary. Like, I'm fucking obsessed with this documentary because he literally comes out and says, Jason Witten was an asshole. He didn't help me at all. I wanted to be a star, and yeah, like, fuck Jason Witten. And then at the very end, I just love the whole, yeah, I hated Jason Garrett, fuck him too. So, like, yeah, just, that's the first clip. And again, if you look at his stats from Dallas, they weren't very good, but it was obvious that he was talented because you don't score. Like, it's crazy because he, you know, it was like an every other year thing. I mean, he had 12 touchdowns and, you know, he had 12 touchdowns and 283 yards his first season. Then he had, you know, 8 touchdowns and 159 yards, then back up to 12 touchdowns and 260 yards in 2010. then back down to 7 and 144 yards. But you have to look at his targets too. Like, he went from getting targeted 27 times his first year, 30 times his second year, 47 times in 2010, where, like, so it's crazy that he doubled his, and so from Dallas's perspective, they doubled his targets from his first season, and he only scored the same amount of touchdowns, and he actually had less receiving yards. So from Dallas's perspective, it's like, if we force feed him the ball and he's going to give us the same production, we might as well only target him around 25 to 30 times a year. And so then the next season they target him 26 times and he only goes for 144 yards and 7 touchdowns. I get it. It's hard, especially not too many teams run with 2 tight ends, but from Dallas's perspective, I'm not saying it's unfair, because I think that Dallas's power structure is really difficult to work within. But at the same time, from their perspective, Martellus, he wasn't really producing on the level that, warranted, elevating him within their offense. So, okay. So then he goes to the Giants, and he has a pretty good year, right? So, he goes all the way up to 626 receiving yards. He only scores 5 touchdowns, but he was targeted 55 times, which is by far the most in his career. 89 times, which is by far the most in his career. And then we go to Chicago. He obviously plays with a lot of passion. He has a lot of confidence, but this just sort of sets the table for what you're about to watch.
Bears tight end Martellus Bennett gets taken down by rookie Kyle Fuller. Bennett jumps up and then body slams Fuller.
Cal grabbed me by my face mask and he tried to hurt my neck or whatever. So I got up, I calmly walked to him, I picked him up by his neck and I slammed him, and I told him I could be punching you right now, but I don't want to. And then I let him go. And that was it. And then Brandon Marshall was talking to me, and he was like, we need him. I was like, you need me too. He could have broke my neck. And then Brandon was like, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, Brandon, do you want to talk or you want to fight? And then he was like, I'm a 6-time Pro Bowler. Then I said, Brandon, 6-time Pro Bowlers could get knocked out too.
The scrap landed Martellus a 6-day suspension administered by the team.
Some of the top people in the Bears organization called me. And I said, he could have broke my neck. And then I said, and then what would happen? And he said, well, your neck would have just been broken. And I said, F you. And I hung up the phone. How you expect me to react? At some point, I got to set the tone. I can't help it if you feel like I fight with a 10. Yeah, I fight with a 10. I grew up fighting. That's the difference between me and a lot of motherfuckers on the team. I fight to win. You got a bunch of bitches on the roster, they don't fight to win. They just want to push and shove. You can't win with that. You don't need linebackers that use forks and knives. I want linebackers that eat with their hands. You know what I'm saying? I want motherfuckers that worry about how their shoes look. Come out and play. We just had a bunch of bitches on the roster. That's why we didn't win games. And coaches like the bitches.
There's a lot to unpack there, obviously. So basically, you got to start with, yeah, I get it. It's really stupid to suspend somebody because they got into a training camp fight. I'm not trying to make excuses, but this whole, maybe the inexperience of Mark Trestman and the whole Canadian Football League coaching thing, I don't know, maybe he overreacted, whatever. I also, when I was researching this video, I looked up a clip because I was a big fan of old school First Take with Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless, and they talk about it, and Stephen A. mentioned something about how maybe the team the year before was like sloppy, and sometimes it's like indicative if there's like training camp fights that can lead to an undisciplined team in the regular season in terms of like penalties. So he was saying maybe if they had a lot of penalties in 2014, that might have been why they had like a really like short circuit in term, or like they were really like quick to stop fighting or like, you know, suspend him or fine him. I don't know. But everything else about that clip is amazing. Everybody hates Jay Cutler. Like, genuinely, if you think Jay Cutler is awesome and you're a Jay Cutler fan, please reach out to me. Like, leave a comment on this video. Tell me that you think Jay Cutler's awesome, because I have never seen or heard anybody just go out of their way to say, oh yeah, Jay Cutler's my favorite quarterback of all time. So he talks about Jay Cutler here, and he talks about how, and I have some other clips or some other quotes that I found where, in retrospect, once he's on the Patriots, he's just shit talking Jay Cutler. But I want to play this clip first, and then we'll go into the clips where he's just shit talking Jay Cutler.
I mean, we just lack leadership. And what happened is leaders didn't look like the way they wanted leaders to look. You can't appoint leaders, because some people that you want to be a leader is not the guy that's the leader. And everyone in the locker room knows that this is not the leader, but this is what you want the face of the team to look like.
Cutler wasn't a leader.
I mean, he was to the coaches. He'd say he was a leader, he was a captain. I voted for myself, so I don't know who voted for him.
Again, that's amazing. Basically, here, I'll read this other clip, and then I'll talk about his relationship with Jay Cutler. So basically, so this was from the like companion piece that went with this profile. So Mina Kimes, she was the voice that you heard when she's like, you hear her say Jay Cutler's name in that clip, but she wrote in an article in ESPN the magazine that came out, I believe it came out before this E60 profile came out, but basically, so Michael Bennett, Martellus' older brother, who at the time was a defensive end for the Seahawks, he said that Jay Cutler was the worst quarterback in the NFL, and I'm assuming he said that sitting right next to Martellus. And so basically Martellus then, basically the way it's written is, he wouldn't go that far, but still had some criticism directed towards his former quarterback, and one that helped him reach the Pro Bowl for the first time in 2014. He said, quote, "I'd be open and he'd throw into double coverage." So this is pretty clear to me that this came out after he was traded to the Patriots, but still during the season. So this came out during the NFL season in which Martellus went on to go win the Super Bowl with the New England Patriots. He didn't really do anything in terms of production, but you know, in the playoffs. Now, I mean, when he was on New England, he got, you know, he had 700 yards receiving. He was targeted 55 times. He had 7 touchdowns. So I mean, he had a really good season in 2016. And you have to remember, the crazy thing is, he was on the team with prime Rob Gronkowski. So, like, it wasn't like he was just the only tight end on that roster. It was very much a similar situation to his situation in Dallas, where you have this other high, you know, production tight end on the roster, but they were able to make it work. And you know, the reason they brought him in was they wanted to sort of recreate the Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski tandem that they used to have before Aaron Hernandez murdered a guy. But, you know, that's a separate video. And then if you look at his, let me see. Yeah, if you look at his playoff numbers, though, like, so in 2016, yeah, he did win a ring, but in their playoff, in the playoffs, he only had 15 targets. He had 11 receptions for 98 yards, and he had no touchdowns. So, I mean, it wasn't like he was some, you know, integral part of that offense during their playoff run. But that's not everything that the stats show. If you actually watch the tape of a lot of those games, and it's interesting because I watched a post-game interview. I'm not going to play it because it's like 20 minutes long, But there's a post-game interview with Deion Sanders and LaDainian Tomlinson on this panel, and Martellus Bennett sits down after winning the Super Bowl, and it's kind of weird because he starts to talk about his time in Dallas and his time in Chicago, and then Michael Bennett comes up onto the stage, and it's kind of, I would have put it in if he would have actually started finished what he was saying about his former teams, because it sounded like he was going to kind of say something somewhat controversial like he was in this profile. But Michael Bennett starts talking about how he was such an important part of that offensive line and blocking, and so I think that if just looking at his stats aren't necessarily giving you a whole picture, but I still look at them, and I wanted to give a more well-rounded picture of his career, because he did have actually a really impressive career in the NFL. And I mean, he only played, the crazy thing was 2017 was his last year in the NFL. So he won the Super Bowl in 2016, and he talks about in that post-game interview how he was a free agent, and Super Bowl winning free agents always get overpaid, and so he was super excited, and he ended up signing a deal with Green Bay, but Green Bay traded him. They traded him right away too. They traded him not even halfway through the season. So they traded him 7 games into the season, and then he didn't even finish out the season with New England in 2017. So it's kind of weird how I don't know, because it's funny to laugh at, but it's kind of sad to see that this incredibly talented tight end, but this also just really open and honest individual in the age of social media, comes out with this crazy profile in the middle of an NFL season, goes on to win the Super Bowl, and then his career's over. So what the fuck happened to Martellus Bennett?